Josh, Arizona State picked last in the Big 12 preseason poll. The media never knows what the heck we're talking about. Why this turnaround? Why now? How is Kenny Dillingham doing this in his second year?
Yeah, but Brandon, there they are. They're right here. So, yeah, I can confirm they showed up. I think, number one, as you well know, the Big 12 is so compacted in terms of competitive balance top to bottom. We see number 1 versus number 16 in their neutral field. The spread's like 7 or whatnot any given week. I think what happened was in the spring, you saw Jaden Rashada enter the transfer portal. And that freaked a lot of people out because that was projected to be Arizona State's starting quarterback. Well, as everyone nationally and regionally freaked out, Kenny Dillingham just kind of said, we'll be all right. And the reason he said we'll be all right is because he knew what the rest of the country was going to come to know, and that was Rashada probably wasn't in line to be their starting quarterback. A kid by the name of Sam Levitt, who's warming up right behind us, was. He also knew Cam Scatterboom is a guy who has all-American potential at the tailback position, but also I think there's been a feeling in this building for a long time that I think the rest of the country is just now getting wind of, and that is when we say culture, everybody says it. But when we say culture, really what I'm looking for when I say that is, does the head coach have the right juice? That's number one. Number two, does the entire building reflect that? When I watch you play, when I watch the way you go about your business, is it like the thumbprint of the head coach? You know Kenny Dillingham well. I know him well. This place is absolutely Kenny Dillingham. This team's absolutely Kenny Dillingham. For that matter, Iowa State is Matt Campbell. I don't think it's any accident that those are the two teams we'll see here today in Dallas.
There are some adjustments that Kenny Dillingham is going to have to make, though, because of the fact they're without leading receiver Jordan Tyson. He suffered an undisclosed injury and is out for the season. He underwent surgery on Tuesday. So, Josh, how does that affect this offense? And who needs to kind of step up to maybe make up some of that gap that he's going to leave in terms of their production?
Red zone defense for Arizona State is what will have to step up. I still think the red zone is what will decide this. Arizona State's an interesting team because even with wide receiver 1, they've gotten to the red zone, haven't converted touchdowns. They're in the 1-teens in that category all year, which just goes to show you they've threaded the needle in other compartments to be able to make it here. In the aggregate, Jeremy, if you were to tell me they score 7s instead of 3s whenever they get in the red zone today, that would be part 1 of the formula. Part 2 of the formula is when Iowa State gets down there, you got to hold them to 3s instead of 7s. It's one of the most fundamental, basic, elementary game plans or way to look at a football game. But I just talked to Taylor Mauser, who's the offensive coordinator here now. Talked to him walking up the tunnel. That's what he echoed for Iowa State. I will guarantee you that's what's being preached in both the team meeting rooms for Arizona State. What happens when the ball gets inside the 20 for both teams today will probably decide this.
Josh, I'll tell you what, Big 12 has been so fantastic to watch, the chaos, but it's hurt their standing in the playoff committee's eyes. They're probably not going to get a first-round bye. But I'll ask you this. Texas obviously just left that conference. If they were still in it, could either of these teams today, Iowa State or Arizona State, beat them, and why?
I guess could. They could. They would be overwhelming underdogs sentimentally to do that. I would not pick them to do that. I think the SEC's brought out the best in Texas, though. Now, when I say that, it sounds like it's a talking point from a memo handed down by Greg Sankey. I don't mean it like the old "it just means more." What I do mean, though, is when you've listened to them talk for the past 3 years, even when they were in the Big 12, they've been talking about building along the lines of scrimmage, building a talent roster to go compete in the SEC. And technically, you could say, oh, that should have been your ethos no matter what conference you played in. Yeah, that's great. That sounds good on paper. In reality, they've been building knowing this date was coming. Now, they're going to play later today in Atlanta for an SEC championship, so they accomplished that. But if we would have pulled the rug out from under them 11th hour and they just stayed in the Big 12 with this team, my inclination is they would have handled the Big 12 pretty thoroughly this year. Having said that, they had that shot. Oklahoma, for that matter, had that shot for a while. and they didn't exactly, dominate the conference. It wasn't always them. In fact, it seldom was them in this game. So I think it's a testament to the Big 12. I'd love to see it in an AB scenario, alternate universe. I'd love to see it, but as it stands right now, there's a lot of oxygen in the Big 12 room. Brett Yormark, the commissioner, was just talking over here a little while ago, and that was the question. You don't have a Texas or an Oklahoma anymore, so who's going to take over? Like, who's going to be that 1, 2, 3, 4 program in the conference? Well, it's up for grabs. That's the beauty of today in a game like this.
And we know that these two teams fairly evenly matched, because at least that's what Vegas thinks, because it's essentially a pick 'em. The line is 1.5 and the total's just shy of 50. So Josh, when you're looking at things, you've been following this all season long. Give us a pick for the game today.
I ended up leaning slightly Iowa State. I do think the wide receiver injury is pretty critical, because as much as you rewind 3 minutes ago, I said if Arizona State can convert touchdowns in the red zone, they'll win. How many times do they get there is my follow-up concern. I also think if you look at the defensive looks that Rocco Becht and Iowa State have been presented with the last few weeks, comparably, today's will be a little bit easier task in knowing what you've got, in knowing what you're seeing it the right way. At that point, you have to execute. And I trust Iowa State's personnel to execute a little bit more. So slightly in Iowa State. Take the points. I think they win outright.
All right, Josh Pate joining us from Arlington, Texas, where he's set to watch the Big 12 title game, which kicks off at noon Eastern time. Great to see you, Josh. Enjoy the game this afternoon. And you heard him. He's leaning just a little bit towards Iowa State. What do you think? You think you lean in that same way?
I'm starting to lean that way because of the injury to the top red receiver.
Tyson, yeah.
If he was out there, I'd get Arizona State easy.
All right, well, Josh Pate, you can get more from him on Josh Pate's College Football Show Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can bet on Sunday he's going to be talking about his experience at the Big 12 title game today. It's live at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube. You can also follow Josh on his socials.